Good evening. Thank you all for coming this evening. Very nice to see you. My name is Bobby Ann Howell. I'm the program manager with Nevada Humanities, and we're meeting tonight at the Nevada Humanities Program Gallery in Las Vegas. And on behalf of the organization, we are happy to have you here with us today. For those of you who may not know who Nevada Humanities is, we are your state's affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we work to connect and transform communities by sharing and amplifying the stories, ideas, experiences, and traditions of the diverse people of Nevada. And we're committed to this mission. Today's program is being recorded and will be posted with the exhibition on our website at nevadahumanities.org. The Nevada Humanities Exhibition Series is a bi-monthly program that showcases the work of Nevada's artists, writers, photographers, journalists, and other creative thinkers and organizations that explore and articulate the sense of place here in the Silver State. This series engages people in a dialogue about all of the aspects of the Nevada experience. And we're thankful to the support of the National Endowment for the Humanities and from patrons like you, and you, and you, and you. All of them. Thank you. Today we are hosting this exhibition from Las Vegas, and we want to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional lands of the Southern Paiutes, and who are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land, and who have lived along the Colorado River for thousands of years, extending north and west into the areas known today as Southern Nevada, Utah, and California. I want to introduce you to tonight's artist, Sharon K Schafer. Her background ranges from painter and photographer to wildlife biologist and river guide. She has two loves, nature and art. She is a signature member of both the International Society of Animal Artists and Artists for Conservation. Her wildlife paintings are sought by collectors and displayed in museums across the country. She shares her artistic talent and passion for the wildlands by teaching art and nature-related classes and lecturing about the stunning beauty and amazing diversity of life on our planet. She earned her degree in wildlife management at Humboldt State University in California, and she has worked as a field wildlife biologist for Soil Conservation Service, Pacific Gas and Electric, and the Bureau of Land Management. She combined her interest in art and science and founded Skydance Studio in 1998, and she has dedicated herself to the creation of images that promote a deeper understanding and appreciation of the beauty and diversity of the natural world. We welcome Sharon K Schafer.
So you already heard, I was a wildlife biologist by training and an artist by passion. And with that background, I realized that the biggest danger to the planet is not so much climate change or anything like that, it's our apathy about the natural world. And so what I wanted to do with this won't be paintings, it's all photographs. But I wanted to put together a collection of photographs that illustrated some of the problems that we're facing. And also I wanted to kind of concentrate on our relationship to the other living things on the planet. So to begin with, I wanted to first kind of orient you in the universe. Small task there, right? And I ran across this image that I thought was great. This is a NASA image. It's when they sent the Cassini spacecraft, and it went underneath the rings of Saturn. That was in 2013. And what they had it do is they had it turn around. And that's our planet. That's our planet. Everything you know, everything you've experienced is that kind of dot in the sky. And that's why it's so fragile. We have to protect it. And I think it provides such an amazing sense of place to see that photograph. And then the other thing I wanted to do is I went into the NASA library and got a bunch of photos that they had, and just still photos, and I animated them because I wanted to kind of remind you the magical place that we live in. And I think too often we kind of get mired in the cities and we don't think about all the life around us. So that, I know you've seen that picture, the blue marble. That was 1972, was the first time we got an image like that. And that's our Earth, 8,000 miles in diameter, 71% water. So there's not a lot of land mass for us. I loved it. Arthur C. Clarke once said, how inappropriate to call this planet Earth when it clearly should be called the ocean. Right now we have 8.3 billion people on the planet, and probably 10 to 14 million species. 86% have not even been described yet. There is all this life out there that we haven't even seen before. And E.O. Wilson said it best. He said, every native species, however humble in appearance, has its place in the nation's heritage. It is a masterpiece of evolution, an ancient, multifaceted entity that shares the land with us. And I think we are not so much afraid we're losing connection to the natural world. We're afraid that we are connected to the natural world, and people are denying that exists. So from there, I went and I took some photos just to discuss some of the major problems that we're facing and things that we should be thinking about. The first thing I wanted to do was talk about extinction. And I looked up in the Webster Dictionary. I told you this yesterday. You know what the definition of extinction is? Extinction is a permanent state of being where there is no future. And so many things on our planet are going extinct. It's not the first time that's happened. 98% of everything that's ever lived on the planet is now extinct. But the rate that's occurring At the American Museum of Natural History, they said global climate change and other causes, probably including collisions between the Earth and extraterrestrial objects, were responsible for these extinction events. There have been 5 major events. Well, we're in the middle of the 6th one. I'm sure all of you have been hearing about that. But the difference is we're causing it this time around. And the rate of extinction, right now, every 10 minutes, we're losing a species on the planet, 150 a day. When I first started putting this show together back in 2018, it was 72 a day. And the rate, the growing rate, is just unbelievable. And I figure the real problem with extinction is that it's quiet. Nobody hears it. Something goes extinct. In the last 10 minutes we've been talking, something has gone extinct. We don't know it. And I'm thinking, what if we sounded a siren 6 times an hour? 50,000 times a year. And just awaken people to what we're losing. And there's so many species that are gone that we've never met, and we never will know. The next thing I wanted to talk a little bit was consumption, kind of our unseen or unrecognized effects that we cause, how we harm the planet and the species that are living with us on the planet. And Jane Goodall once said, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. But what you do makes a difference. And you have to decide what kind of difference you plan on making. And we're absolutely in denial if we think we don't cause part of the problem, that we don't change the world that we're living in. And so to kind of discuss that, I wanted to come up with an image that showed us how we could not think about it, but be causing major changes. So I came up with this idea. And what I wanted to do is talk about the monarch butterflies. And I know probably most of you have kind of heard the general story about the loss of so many of the monarchs. And there used to be 1 billion butterflies that flew from Mexico up through, mostly through central United States and Canada, and then there were some that kind of came around on the coast. But the major part was up through the center of the country. There were 1 billion. And that was fine. And then agriculture started coming in, and they started planting corn. There were so many corn products that we use, and in this, I'm thinking about cornflakes in the morning, just as a symbol, And yeah, populations decreased quite a bit, but they wanted greater and greater production, so they started planting the genetically modified crops. So they could then go in and any of the milkweed, which is the vital plant for the monarchs, any of the milkweed that was left in the corn could be sprayed and you could get rid of that. Well, sure, production went up and monarch butterflies went down. So now, you used to have 1 billion butterflies. Now there's maybe 100 million. Their populations have dropped by like 90%. And this, if you want to really get depressed today, in 2013, their entire area down in Mexico where they overwintered was 1.6 acres. And it's come up a little bit. The best they've had recently was 5 acres in 2023. And And this year it's down to 2.5 acres. That's the size of a Target store. And the entire population overwinters there. And damage is still occurring. And so in our desire to increase production, we've wiped out that whole chain of events that existed for eons. Think occasionally of the suffering of which you might spare yourself the sight. That's something Schweitzer said. And we keep, I don't know what the answer is. You know, we just keep growing and growing, and every business wants to expand and get bigger. You can't just stay the same, you have to keep expanding. And Edward Abbey, I loved his comment, unlimited growth is the ideology of the cancer cell. It's going to get to the point, and we're starting to see that point where things are breaking down. So the next major thing that I saw that I really wanted to talk about was fragmentation. That's destruction of the habitat or the fragmentation of the wildlands that we have. And John Muir had said, when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it's attached to the rest of the world. And we can't keep chopping up the habitat like that. So I was thinking, how can I show that? And I thought, the checkerboard would be a good way of talking about fragmented habitat. What used to be a matrix of people occasionally in wild habitat, now it's little bits of wild habitat in a matrix of people. And we've continued to break it up into smaller and smaller bits. So now you have almost like a confetti of leftover habitats for the animals. So formerly healthy and robust communities of life have just been torn apart. And a lot of animals require a lot of space. And they can't live with these fragmented habitats. So I chose this as an image where I could discuss that. And so much of the world is dedicated to feeding the human population now. And I don't know what the answer is. Then I read the quote, if you look deeply enough, you will see music, the heart of nature being everywhere. And so I was kind of interested in how I could use music kind of to discuss some of these things. And I actually, and I've told you this story. So how many of you guys, probably nobody, knows Krause, Bernie Krause? Do you know the Weavers? No. Well, it was a musical group back in '63, Pete Seeger and the Weavers. And Bernie Krause was a member of that, and he became very famous. And then he moved on to work in the movies, and he did the soundtrack to Apocalypse Now and Love Story and a lot of things kind of that time in 70s, early 70s. And then he said, that's it, I'm quitting. He was fabulously wealthy. He said, nope, I'm going back to college. And he became expert in marine acoustics and doing recordings, audio recordings. And he went all over the world recording the sounds of nature. And that has become such an important resource for researchers, because they'll go out and do recordings of the same place. and they can tell how much the ecosystem has changed and how much the habitat has changed. And he talked about doing one, I think it was up in the High Sierras, and there was an area where they did selective logging, and he went in before the logging and he recorded it, and they figured out all the species that were there. Then they went back, it was something like 3 years later, did the recording again. If you looked at it, it didn't look any different. You know, the trees had grown up and all of this kind of stuff. But the species diversity never recovered from that original logging. And what he said was a great silence spreading over the natural world, even as the sound of man is becoming deafening. Little by little, the vast orchestra of life, the chorus of the natural world, is in the process of being quieted. There has been a massive decrease in the density and diversity of key vocal creatures, both large and small. And I think all of us here know that our fate and the earth are intertwined, and the fate of all the species that live on the earth. And I think the value of arts and the humanities as a tool for conservation can't be underestimated. I mean, it is such an important tool because it engages with people's emotion, and if you get people caring about the environment, I think that's when perhaps we can start making change. So with this show, I didn't want to just show everybody a bunch of pictures and tell them that what I thought was going on, but I wanted to really engage people. And I saw this quote by Terry Tempest Williams. And she said, "The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they're praying that we see beyond our own time." And I wanted to do something that was a call to action. I wanted to engage people. And so what we did, this was at Nevada State Museum when we put the show up there. And this was back in 2018. And so that was a 12-foot long array of photos. There were 72 in that. That was one for every species that would be lost that day. Not those particular species we're not losing, but they're just representative of species that are being lost. And so what I asked people to do So we had these plastic sleeves for all the pictures. Then I asked people to choose a picture, take it out of the exhibit, they could take it home, but in return, they had to leave me a promise. And I didn't care how small the promise was, whether it was taking their grandson out to Red Rock or swearing that they will try and enlighten somebody and take them on a hike someplace, or just give money to a conservation organization. I didn't care, but I wanted them to decide to do something, not just read about it and go, man, that's really bad, and then go on their way. And when we did this at the State Museum, we had about 800 a month, I forget, 700 to 800 promises a month, and we had it up for 8 months. And then when I took it down to Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, we were getting about 400 a month, and it was up there for 3 months. And it was amazing. The little kids, maybe all they would do is draw, kind of copy some of the photos that I had in the exhibit. But they were engaging and they were understanding more. about the life that we're losing. And I did the kind of a similar layout in the one here, in the array here, and I have it very structured at the beginning, then at the end it kind of comes apart at the end, and the spacing is odd, and I wanted that to look like a fabric that was framed at the very end because of the species we're losing. And in the gallery here, I have 75 images up, but each one represents 2 species that are being lost per day. So, 150 species per day. So the big point I'm trying to get across is we are animals. We're sharing the planet with other animals. And we're all fellow citizens of this place, and we need to take responsibility and start making the hard choices. And we have this amazing bias of speciesism, where we think our species is the top of the pyramid, the best thing on the planet. And we have to realize each species has their own talents. Watch a hummingbird. It can do amazing things that we can't even dream of. And it must see us as these really sluggish little people that walk around on 2 feet. So I think the very last thing I wanted to do is just have you consider our place in nature. And I think the best way to do it with this quote by Henry Beston. And he wrote this, I think it was in the book, The Outermost House. He said, "We need another and wiser and perhaps a more mystical concept of animals. For the animals shall not be measured by man. In a world older and more complete than ours, they move finished, gifted with the extension of senses we have lost or never attained, living by voices we shall never hear. They are not brethren. They are not underlings. They are other nations, caught with ourselves in the net of life and time, fellow prisoners of the splendor and travail of the earth." being a biologist, that's been great because a lot of times I had to be out in the field and just observe the animals. And you just get such a sense of the civilization that they're living in. And I wish all people could start feeling that. We would treat the world differently if we could.
So you have a really impressive resume of what Bobby Ann was saying in your past and these companies you worked for. Did you just carry a camera with you a lot when you were working, or was this all done after you were on your own, like on your own jaunts or your own time? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it kind of evolved because I started out and I was more of a painter. And then I'm going, well, I can't steal photos to paint from. You know, I need to take my own reference photos, and it's never the right posture anyway. You want to be out there and you want to get a sense of the animal before you paint it. And so I started taking photos, and then that started taking off. And then I started working eco tours around the world. And so my job was to go out and photograph animals and sit and observe them. I just loved it. And so the two just kind of weave together. It's this weird tapestry. Or maybe I just have ADD and can't concentrate on one subject. I don't know. But any other?
Yeah, and just go back a little bit. Your work is a variation of large. It's not the same, but I'm assuming you've seen Joe Sartori's Animal Ark,
Yes.
National Geographic.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he's done that does have some parallels with you is the humanization of some of the animals, right? The human characteristics of, like, we were talking about the coyote's look and that kind of stuff. Is that something that you see as a goal, or is that just a byproduct, or because I think he sees it more as a goal, or is it just something that you don't think about? Or?
No, I think all the time I've been out in the field, I've always thought of that, and it brings me closer and closer. It'll sound corny. No, it won't sound corny. To the oneness of life, and that. Like I just said, like they're really different civilizations. And I've just always enjoyed that. And yeah, when I went to pick the photographs, I picked the ones that gave you the best glimpse of that whole world that's going on in their brain. You know, and that coyote was just perfect the way it gives somebody a side eye. So.
That's great answer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So